So there are at least two more functions we're going to have to write for our user type. One to reset a password, and one to verify that any password supplied by a user actually matches the hash we have in the database. Now we're going to probably write some more as time goes on, and we're certainly going to come back and modify some of these ones, but this will get us started. So let's do the reset password one first. So back in models.go, inside the data package, inside the internal folder, let's go down here just after the insert function we wrote last time, and hit return a couple of times, and create a new function. And this one again is with the receiver of view pointer to user. And we'll call this one reset password. And it will take one argument, the new password, and that's a type string. And it returns, potentially, an error. Okay? And I'll get my two context lines, as always, copy those, paste them in here, and get started. So once again, we need to hash the password. Now, we can actually just come back up here and copy all of this, okay, and paste it in here and just make the changes as necessary. We're not hashing user.password, we're hashing the supplied string password, okay? And we have to change our return to just the error. So now we have the hashed password. So let's update the user. And that's as simple as creating a statement that says update users, set password equal to $1, where ID equals $2. And of course, we're going to get the ID from the receiver. Now we'll ignore the first return parameter, but check for an error when we call db.execContext. I'm going to scroll up a bit here. And we hand it the context. And we hand it this statement. And we hand it hashed password. And we get the ID from the receiver, eu.id. Okay? If the error is not equal to nil, I can just copy this. So let's just copy this error checking code and paste it in here. And if we get past that, we just return nil. So that was dead simple. Now, let's do a similar thing, but now we want to create a function with a receiver of view pointer to user. And this one is going to be PasswordMatches. So the user is trying to log in somehow. They supply a password, and we just call this method, handing it the plain text password, and we do a compare. If we hash this one, does the hash that from the supplied password match the hash in the database? And that's really simple. So we'll have one parameter. I'm going to call it plain text because it's the plain text password of type string. And this returns potentially, well, it's always going to return a Boolean, but potentially an error. So true if they match and false if they don't. Now in this case, we don't actually need the context because we're just going to be comparing something we already know with something that's been given to us. So we'll check for an error when we call, again from the bcrypt package, but this time we're not generating a password, we're comparing a hash and a password, which Go helpfully gives us. So we give it, first of all, the one that we know is correct, and that's going to be converted to a slice of bytes, getting u.password. Okay, that password hash we have in the database that we're getting straight from the receiver at this point, and we're comparing that with a slice of bytes, and that's plain text, which we got as a call to this function. So in this case, I'll make my errors check a little bit more complex. If error is not equal to nil, then we're going to switch. We'll switch, and our first one, our first case, is going to be errors from the errors package .is the error, and we're supplying it the error we have here to look at, is that of type bcrypt, CRYPT, dot error mismatched password, hash and password, right there. So if that's our first case, then I'm going to do one thing, okay? And what I'm going to do is just say, well, this is an invalid password. And we'll return false and nil, okay? That's all we want in that case. But in the second case, which will be the default case, something else went wrong. Don't know what it is. So this time I'll return false and whatever the error is. And I'll handle it from wherever I called this particular method. Okay? And down here, if there's no error, then everything is good. So return true, this is a valid password, and nil, there is no error. And that should be all there is to it. And this, for the moment at least, takes care of the methods we're going to need on the user type. So now it's time to turn our attention to the token type and write its database functions. And we'll get started on that in the next lecture.